Good evening, morning, afternoon, whatever applies to you, and welcome back to yet another EuroLeague. G2 are officially the second best team in the world, am I right? And to discuss it all with me, I'm joined, as always, by, of course, Mr. Keire and Nymaera. But before we
Sorry,
do
LPL expert
any of
Nymaera.
that...
He was very, very
Oh, yes.
happy.
Actually, yeah, I'm rebrand. Did I say EuroLeague? This is more of like an amalgam. This is now...
Yeah.
Chinese meat. I don't know. Or the point is, Complaint Struck's not coming back anytime soon, guys. That's the point, because that region, that's
Yeah,
a
who
dead
would do it?
region.
Yeah, do a third best region podcast.
Dead region. Anyway, before we get into any of that, we do have to start with my patented "Would you rather," which is scrolling. There it is. Oh, this one is ripped straight from Reddit. So back to my roots, Keire. Back to my roots. Thought this one was actually quite interesting. Thought there's a lot of directions you could go in. By the way, side note, I do notice that when you go on the subreddit of Would You Rather, yes, there is a Would You Rather subreddit, almost every single Would You Rather is Would you rather X or have like $1 kabillion? That's like literally every single
What
one.
is the monetary value of this other option?
Yeah, but they're always
basically.
It's always such arbitrary like amounts of money, and because it's always reduced to like financial gain versus whatever the other thing is, it always just turns into a well, what if the number was this instead of that? You know, like it's just really weird. So anyway, I don't know. But my much more interesting would you rather, Nymaera, is would you rather have an 8-year-old's mind in an adult body, or an adult body, but with an 8-year-old's mind?
Well, the adult's mind in an 8-year-old's body, that's basically just a whole bunch of isekai novels, I'm not gonna lie. That's literally just the plot of like so many different isekai novels. Like, wow, been reborn with all this knowledge and time to have a high potential life where I'm a special person. Typically that tends to go a lot better. Although I don't think a lot of those shows really go into the whole, what would you do for like 10 years as like an adult in a kid's body? What would you do?
Yeah,
It's
obviously the
probably
inference is you don't age as well, so you're stuck.
Oh, is that the inference? Oh, I thought you just go back to that
No,
point
no,
and then
no,
you
no,
keep
no, no,
aging.
no.
Because
Otherwise,
I
that
think
would
that's
be
actually,
easy.
well, that's the thing. So I actually think that's a more, well, no, I mean, basically the other one being an 8-year-old in an adult's body is like, okay, well, you're completely screwed.
Yeah,
But
that's
I
just
think,
terrible. That's just awful in
yeah,
that
I
case.
think personally, well, I think you're probably pretty screwed if you never age up mentally. Society is not kind to you. You know, this is obviously this will not be a complete comparison, but you know, for people who have like have problems with like education systems, for people who live with like learning disabilities, it can be a very, very difficult society, particularly I think over the last couple of years, particularly since COVID and like the downturn of society, really, of the last like 5 years or so,
The
kind of
collective brain
globally.
rot. Yeah.
I think it's a very unkind place to live as someone who doesn't conform very easily to the framework of society. So personally, even though living in a kid's body, well, an 8-year-old's body is not easy either, though. But at least you could at least like exist online to a certain degree. That doesn't. It's difficult either way. I think personally, living with like a child's mind and an adult body, I think that would be very difficult to live in with today's society. It's not very kind to people who aren't like who are rather like have learning disabilities, which I think is an analog here. It won't be quite the same, but you know what I mean.
So you'd pick the kid's body, adult mind. Is that
Yeah, I
right?
think so. I don't think society is very kind to people in the other situation.
Interesting. Keira, what are your thoughts?
So it's like inversing. So it's like adult, kid's mind.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it? Yeah, am I getting it right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
but you don't age in either scenario.
Some people would say I am an adult with a child's mind already, so I've been doing all right. So
There you go. That's where the shitting room in the castle came from, Nymaera. It was in front of us.
Oh,
all
right,
this
right.
time.
That's the 8-year-old's mind right there. Yeah.
Got him.
It's just the difficult thing, right? Where if you have an adult's body, people will expect you to live and act as an adult, and if that's not the case for you, then that is a very difficult thing.
Okay. I have read a lot of things about many subject matters. Brain forming and like those like types of like stuff is not my area of expertise. However, what I have read in it, I have not been impressed with in terms of like its scientific like thoroughness, alright, and how accurate it seems. It seems to be revised rather quickly. You know what I mean? Like Newtonian physics stood for like a good like 200 years and it was pretty robust, right? You know, chemistry, biochemistry stood for like thousands of years. If you go back to the principles that the Egyptians first figured out about like coppers and irons, right? Very robust. I am not that sure the whole like passage of like from like child to like adult is as much like aging as it is much of like taking on onboard experiences. Um and like the whole idea of like you have like a child's brain and then all of a sudden you click your finger and then it's like you have an adult's brain by some 16th birthday in Scotland or 18th birthday somewhere else or 21st birthday. I think it is very
Or
much
12
like
in the Vatican City.
yeah.
If
So
you know, you know.
if you read about certain ancient cultures and cultures that are still on the planet, they have there's rituals of people who become adults when they're like 11 and they're given like extensive responsibilities and they have those responsibilities forever. And it's like and for all intents and purposes, they are an adult. You know what I mean? They are like they have to make like adult like decisions and stuff like that. So I think I would take adult body, child mind, but I know that's not in the spirit of the question. Just to, like make it more interesting of an answer of like where minds comes from.
I think it's in the spirit. I'm taking adult body, child mind. I actually think this is a pretty easy one because I know there's a whole like, well, your frontal lobe doesn't even develop until you're 25. Blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to lie. I don't know what that means. I know what the frontal lobe is, but I don't know what the inference of that is. What's that lobe for? Is that, I believe it's to do with inhibition. I believe it's like decision making based, I think, when they talk about that. But again, I don't know anything about the brain. But what I do know is that between the ages of like 3 and 9 or something, you're unbelievably receptive to certain forms of learning as a child mind. Like you'll become a fucking what's it, polymath or whatever. Like you should be amazing at every fucking language under the sun. Like
polyglot in that case.
Polyglot. Like a kid's ability to learn languages is like way better than an adult mind. I think that's something that like the older you get, it's simply the worse your capacity to learn that kind of thing gets. And I think that applies for lots of different things of learning. They did a study on like the best European education systems in Europe and when you should start learning. And I think in Germany, you don't even go to school. I think I'm right in saying this, until you're 7. And because they worked out that that's like the most optimum point in time to start taking on information.
Really depends on the area. So for instance, Bavaria has a very different education system for the rest of Germany, but I'm not exactly sure how it differs.
They're not even part of Germany if you ask the Bavarians.
But I don't know.
Well, they're culturally very different. So there's
reject Germany, Bavaria forever.
But I might be chatting nonsense. I'm not sure. But the point is, if you're a kid, the way I see it is you get the best of both worlds, right? Because you're more receptive to information. Like your mind's like a sponge, right? But also everything seems so much more like, I don't know, magical and whimsical. Like Christmas comes around and you're like, woo, this is amazing. When you're an adult, all that magic's lost. If I go to Disneyland as an 8-year-old in an adult's body, I mean, arguably you see a lot of adult babies at Disneyland anyway. But the point is, you're going to be, suckered in and buy in to all of the sort of ethereal glitter of life, as it were, that only an innocent child can possibly experience. Whereas, we're all cynical old men who don't get nearly as much fun out of these kind of things. I don't know, like...
when I realised this whole thing about the brain thing was bullshit, right, okay? Because I came from... my older generation of my family are, like, old. They're, like, old. Like, my grandfather was born in 1946. He grew up on food stamps, like rationing, you know what I mean? So, like, they are of, like, that bygone age. And I knew most of my great-grandparents, right, okay? They used to always hit you with this bullshit thing. They're like, boys are good at maths and girls are good at English. And by the way, this thing was this thing was perpetuated when I was actually at like primary school and stuff like that. Okay.
Yeah,
like,
there's a bunch of societally provably incorrect stuff that was peddled for generations.
Right? And I remember just sitting there and I'm like, But I'm really good at both these things. This is bullshit. Like, what the fuck is this? And I'm sitting staring at like the boy next to me, and I was like, "There's no way he's good at maths. He's playing with Play-Doh right now." I'm like, unless he's counting Play-Doh rocks. I was
Well,
like, he's done
there is a
for.
shit ton of stuff like that which just has passed under the radar for forever, and it's just kind of accepted as societally normal. And the more you, like, not to get like too woke about it, but it definitely does. There's a lot of stuff which is peddled for like no good reason. So, really
It was
fun one.
great.
This is a very fun fact. The way that modern Western society thinks about death and bodies is entirely about propping up the after the Undertaker industry post American Civil War. If you go before the American Civil War, the way that society looked at bodies of dead loved ones was very, very different, because actually before then, particularly in Ireland, actually even to today, Ireland has a very different way to they deal with like when someone's died, where actually they will keep the body around the house for like a little while, actually, to say goodbye to it and fully pass on. Like, you know, you
They do that
treat it.
here.
Yeah, they do as well, but not. It's not a widespread thing. It's not as much of a widespread thing where they deal and then you have a wake and stuff like that. But the reason why the dead bodies and was kind of, there's such an aversion to them in modern culture has been effectively in the American Civil War. So many people died so far away from home that undertakers and embalmers made an absolute killing off the American Civil War. After the American Civil War was done, effectively, they had to have a way to convince people that you still needed undertakers for far more than they needed before the American Civil War, so they didn't go out of business. They said, oh, it's unhygienic and it's unsightly, and actually there's maybe, and then obviously some spiritual stuff around there too, and they said, you definitely need embalmers and undertakers. And that really changed the way that modern society looked at dead bodies, when actually before that point, and in some places in the world too, actually bodies are kept around for a much longer time, obviously after being, you know, cared for and stuff like that. But there's a lot of things, this just being a specific example, where realistically you go back a couple of generations, opinions would have been very, very different because of some various industry thing which had happened.
I mean, I find all the like after death stuff, like keeping bodies around, fucking weird. Like, I'm not gonna lie, but I mean, if you think any of that's weird, like how they do it in some Asian countries is 10 times more weirder. I mean, all I'll say is
you would consider that weird, but other people would consider that actually emotionally a very important thing. So you have physically that ability to say they are gone. This is something that people do with their pets. If you die and you leave a pet, let them see your body, because otherwise they will never understand.
I'm not
Like,
talking
that's
about.
animals.
I'm not talking about that, Nymaera. I'm just saying Google ghost brides and wet bodies, and you'll go down a really fun,
okay,
a really fun
I
rabbit
don't know
hole.
how widespread that is, but yeah, I don't know enough
That's
about
a thing.
that.
That's a relatively widespread thing. So yeah.
Okay, I don't know enough about that to comment.
Yeah, no, probably a good thing too. Anyway, welcome, timestamp enjoyers, to another EuroLeague. We're going to actually start with in a weird order here, because I think it just makes sense more narrative-wise to talk about G2 against Gen G first as like sort of a framing device for the rest of the episode, rather than starting with the final or whatever. Because, yes, you heard that right, G2 toppled arguably the strongest lineup of all time if you go at peak performance level, rather than but they didn't win worlds. Certainly one of the strongest lineups of all time, so we'll start there. And of course G2, who came into this tournament, yes, all the memes 7th seed, haha, I mean, it's a bit overwrought at this point because no one actually believes they were 7th seed worthy anyway, but it was a genuine discussion as to whether or not they might even win Europe. So it's very surprising, to say the least, that they toppled one of the greatest lineups ever put together. So yeah, I mean, first of all, we actually obviously talked about it a little bit in real time on your stream, Nymaera. But what were your like sort of first visceral reactions to just G2 beating one of the greatest ever Korean teams?
I think after I think there's a lot of, where do we start with this? I think actually it's important to say, after the first 2 or 3 days of the event, people were so doomer about the West just in general, and the tournament in general, because we had what, like 4 3-0s back to back pretty much. We had a couple of days which were just 3-0 3-0, and of course in a full best of 5 tournament, you want to see some more like tightly contested games, and then suddenly G2 slam out a wonderful series versus BFX, but then people kind of had the caveat of, well, you know, probably, you know, there's only one player that made it international here before, that was Kellen, everyone else was new, Vikla was playing absolutely awful, so, you know, does it really feel like you've beaten a proper Korean team? There are caveats. Now, I am of the opinion that it is, of course. You've beaten the second team from Korea. They deserve to be there over T1. They deserve to be there over DK. Yeah, they definitely didn't. They didn't play very well. I don't think comparative to, well, they obviously didn't play very well compared to G2. But coming off of that against Gen G, I thought if G2 take one game, I would have considered that a win. Because Gen G destroyed JDG. They hadn't really been contested by any other team at the event. It just didn't look.
They'd for context, for people who don't watch LCK, they had only dropped 2 solitary games up until this point. Not matches, games.
Yeah, and while they hadn't faced T1 in the entirety of LCK to really tell whether T1 could do that, T1 fell apart, so they didn't earn the right to face Gen G. So coming into that series, I thought, well, this is going to be a bit rough. However, I really like the way that Hans and Labrov level, because they started the event very poor. Hans and Labrov did not play well versus Team Secret Wales and versus BLG. I don't think they played very well there at all. I thought that BB wasn't playing very well at the start of the tournament either. They got demolished by BLG before that. So coming up against Gen G, they'd level up against BFX, and I thought, well, they dealt with Diablo and Kellen, who I thought were meant to be one of the best bot lanes at the event, and they certainly were on the way into the event. And of course, Raptor, I thought was one of the best junglers of the event. Skewmond manhandled him. I thought Skewmond was absolutely fantastic. So coming into that, I thought, well, Gen G are going to be too much for them, but they'll give it a good shot. And I thought that Gen G in that series absolutely disrespected G2 with their level of prep, whereas G2 had incredible drafts, incredible level 1s, and they stuck the landing. I just reviewed it before coming on to review this episode. I haven't had a chance to review the finals, but I'm more clued up on this one. And Gen G, I thought that they had no idea how to deal with Skewmond. They had no idea how to deal with him. I think that I look at that series and I think, well, Gen G were very disrespectful in thinking that they could get away with kind of flimsy early games and they'll just eventually out-team fight. That just wasn't the case. G2 figured out what they wanted from every single role on the map. I think they were very clear about their priorities for each different lane. And I think that Gen G made some huge mistakes at level 1s about warding jungle. And I thought that G2 were really, really good at making sure once they got a lead, it was effectively lights out. Once they got ahead of it, they didn't strategically throw around different objectives or give Gen G a way back in. They were really clear on their game plan. So I was very, very happy with G2. And Gen G, I think both things can be true. G2 played and prepared very, very well. Gen G did not play very well and didn't prepare very well. But even in that scenario, before that series, I didn't think that was possible. It was an incredible upset. And I think, given expectations for the event for both teams, this is one of the most significant games in League of Legends history.
Yeah, by the way, the point you made at the start, I think is quite interesting just to touch on, which is like, yeah, when they beat BFX, people were saying, is this even like a proper international Korean team, whatever, even though objectively they earned the right to be there. But what I thought was really crazy, and I didn't actually think this was going to happen, I did just think there would be a universal consensus of like, holy moly, G2 just smashed Gen G, that's amazing. No. There was still some cope that because T1 weren't at the event, basically doesn't count, because T1 are the international performers and Gen G aren't. I'm just like, holy shit, dude. Like, are we really going there?
You have to earn the right to be there, and they didn't.
That is like a crazy take. It's like when you're watching how T1's fumbling in LCK and just extrapolating, it's like, well, they've won Worlds before, so it's like, come on, guys. Like, however you look at it, this was, I mean, it's been touted as the greatest upset in League history. To be honest, I haven't thought about all the games that have ever happened to say whether that's true or not.
But it's up there.
Yeah, but it feels like it. Like in this moment in time, if you put me on the spot, the fact, as you said, Keire, the fact that it's 3-0, it does feel like it.
That's the context. Okay, here's like the thing in terms of like to unpack it. The form going in is like incredible. They won't end. How much of a favourite Gen G were, you know what I mean? But G2 is like a good team. Like Labrov is top 1-2 supports in EU, right? Like Hansama's best ADC, top 1-2. Caps is top 1 mid, greatest Western player of all time. A bit similar to Faker. He's not the best player right now, but he can like reach back still and give you games, right? Skewmond's the best player in Europe. Okay, and then BB's like there. Whatever the fuck you want to say about BB. By the way, no, play it fair. For some people, BB's the best top laner in the West has ever produced. So you can't have it both ways. No, for some people it is, like Dom. Dom believes BB's the best top laner that the West ever produced, right?
Oh
Gosh,
my
really?
god!
Yeah, well, he's the best.
Right,
I think he is. Well,
I've seen this guy. I can't even remember what kind of channel he's got, but he does this yellow card, red card thing with people giving takes. If that's true, if Dom said that, that's a red card for you, Dom. Right there, that's a red card.
Okay, I'm not co-signing anything that Dom says. If you want Dom's opinion, you can just go to his stream. He talks all the time, right? You don't need to come to Keire for Dom's opinions. But I'm just saying, people do highly rate BB, right? In terms of like that like thing, okay? That is like a decent team. And you know, here's the other part of it, right? Gen G's like form going into the event and at the event, bro. Like Gen G has got like series where they were just they absolutely murdered people. So you know, it is like, put it this way, I'd be hard pressed. It's in like the top 3 ever. I know the bit of work that they did where they have like the finals of like DRX beating T1 and the BO5. They had that up there. There's certain ones I gave context to Nymaera. Technically, like Royal beating EDG at Season 4 Worlds is bonkers, by the way, if you know the context of China. But
because EDG just didn't lose to Chinese teams at that point.
Yeah, so there's a bunch of stuff, but put it this way, it's one of them.
I think the argument is between biggest or greatest, right? Because it doesn't have the stage, I think, it doesn't have, what the argument will be, it doesn't have the stage of G2 RNG 2018 or G2 versus T1 in either MSI or Worlds
yeah, so
that year.
That's a bigger upset for me, by the way. G2 versus RNG. And the reason is G2's bot lane is genuinely wank. It's terrible. It's
Well,
fucking...
Wadid at that point.
Yeah. Wadid is fucking
Oh my
diamonds,
goodness,
mate. And he's up against...
That.
He's up against Uzi Ming, which is is arguably the GOAT bot lane ever, by the way, right? And they're like 2v2 killing them. And, bro, it was ridiculous, by the way. I digress. Right, also, RNG was on Golden Road that year.
By the way, not to distract from this, but was this a period where they were doing like the Heimerdinger bot thing?
Bro,
yes.
No. They didn't play it. This is the myth.
Okay.
And this is, everyone forgets it doesn't get played.
Okay. No, I didn't know. I was just genuinely asking.
They are playing it during the series. I don't think they ever play it. I don't think in that series they ever get to play it. Everyone just says that that happened, but Heimer never gets picked in the series. I think it gets banned 2 games. Or maybe it's picked in 1, but I don't think so. I think it's banned 2 games and they never pick it. They actually just beat them like straight up. It's weird. Bro, it's the most fried thing. Bro, they literally beat Uzi Suver by placing wards on top of like the Thresh Lantern and stuff. Like, it's hilarious. I digress. We'll move back and bring on forward. An amazing upset. But let me unpack it in the reverse, right? Obviously, because Peter Dunn
you're right. It was banned the entire series, all 5 games.
There we go. Yeah. Again, I've got a really good memory for these like types of things. Like, so here's the thing about it. Peter Dunn was talking about it. Look, this is why I hate BO1s. By the way, can we please never do BO1s for anything ever? This tournament's super legit because it's all BO5s, full series play. G2 walked through the hard side of the bracket and made the final, making it extra special. Yes, they didn't win the event, but Graham, by aggregate results, G2 is either the 2nd or 3rd best team in the world at this moment in time. By like aggregate like results, which is an amazing thing to be saying from G2. Every tournament you play, they all matter. In League of Legends, there isn't a fake tournament. Like when DRX won Worlds, they don't instantly become the best team in the world, but they were probably a top 4 team in the world at that event and at that time period. You know what I mean, right? So it doesn't mean they're the best team in the world. It just means that you kind of have to respect the fact that they did beat everybody, right? G2's off the similar favour. And here's the little crux, Rich. Do you think G2 is going to go back to Europe and dominate Europe with the same form that Gen G dominates LCK?
Yeah, well, exactly. I think that's funny. That's actually funny.
Right.
But why is that though? Why do you think that is?
Because Gen G did actually come down a level and G2 came up. Both things can simultaneously be true without it being reductive to G2. Yep. You know what I mean?
And my thought was effectively, I didn't think even with Gen G stepping down a level and G2 up a level, it would still be enough. That's how one-sided I thought it would be. And I thought if they got one game, fantastic, maybe G2 overlooked them. I didn't expect it to be this level.
And here's the thing. Fundamentally, even if we say Gen G stepped down, G2 still had to execute winning strategies. They didn't play passive bot lanes. They played fast-pushing, kill bot lanes. Skewmond didn't play low tempo, low decision making jungling. He played high tempo, high decision making jungling. So you can the agency was still with the G2 players. This wasn't Gen G like fumbling dragons, like getting out team fought, like Ruler flashing into the middle of like the enemy team and getting himself insta killed at like
There
a
were
fourth dragon.
some
No,
moments like that, but it wasn't the defining factor of the series.
and that's what I'm saying. But most of G2's leads all appeared before like 15 minutes. Like they were all like
Yes.
public. And here's the thing: they were replicable, like from game to game to game to game. One big and one last like general note just before I like hand it back over about this is like what's really interesting, and we're talking about the G2 side is. And who was it that tweeted it out? Gillis tweeted it out, and Shikares, I think, tweeted it out, right? Them losing to BLG was the best thing that could happen to them at this tournament. Because when they lost to BLG, click their fingers, they fixed all their drafts.
Yes.
G2 do the same thing at Worlds every year, where they play the first BO1 and the second BO1, and their drafts are shit, and then when they get to the BO3 elimination stage, they've ironed everything out, and then they didn't make it one year, and then they missed it by the skin of they made it by the skin of their teeth the next again year, right? But G2 just needed the time. And this is why I hate fucking BO1s and low best of series being used for like seeding. Because we would, if this was a BO1, BO3 seeded tournament, we wouldn't have gone, I don't think G2 would have made the same adaptation. It took them getting hammered off of BLG to realise we've got a massive like problem and we need to like change what we're doing here, right? But that only got triggered by stage results. The scrim data was in the past doesn't seem to have been doing that for G2. And they look at the providence that they got to it. You cannot deny they went on a 7-game win streak against the top 5 teams in the world. 2 of them arguably the second and first best team in the world. It is one of the greatest series runs of a Western team of all time. The 2019 G2 team didn't do this. They dropped games to
T1.
Dam1, T1, they went to 5 games against T1. So even in terms of the fact that they won the events, right, it's completely different. They weren't like the series dominant in terms of the scoreline. So kudos.
Yeah. I mean, that's like one of the things for me when we talk about greatest upset or whatever. And again, I'm not like immediately at the forefront of my brain familiar with the other ones that would be in contention to comment. But to me, it was like the nature of the wins, not even just the scoreline, but the nature of the wins themselves makes it even more extreme. I mean, I'm just sat there halfway through game 3, like, has anyone ever beaten Gen G this cleanly? Like, it was so clean, it was unbelievable. Like, again, loads of people said it at the time, but it's like, you turn the nameplates off, you just assume this is Gen G against some EU Challenger team. Like, they are just rolling them like it's nothing. Like, these people are dirt on their shoe. Like, it's not even remotely competitive. Like, not remotely competitive. And I think that to me was like almost as big a story as the fact if they'd won these series 3-2 and it'd been messy back and forth or whatever, and let's say they'd won the event, in a way it's not as impressive because it's just the nature of beating this Gen G team the way they did off the back of that BFX series, which was then legitimized further by the Gen G series of like, no, it's not that BFX are complete dog shit. It's that G2 in this moment in time are absolutely phenomenal and they're just an unstoppable wrecking ball. To me, that's like the craziest thing about it. A Western team, like since this like serious international play has been a thing, a Western team has never dumpstered a Korean team like this in such like brazen fashion. Like,
well, especially back to back. I mean, we had like G2 versus Gen G Worlds 2020, which like that kind of broke Gen G a little bit actually in that era. That's like the only other time, but that was a single team, and of course then Gen G then lost to Damwon in semifinals, and who then went on to win the event. Like, dumpstering both first and second seed in the way that they did, where I thought, legitimately, I thought that they were better prepared. I think they were better players, and I think that they clutched out the more important moments as well. There is not a single person on Gen G who I think outperformed the opposing number on the other team. All 5 members of G2 outperformed all 5 members of Gen G. And I think particularly off the Rift as well, I thought that Gen G just weren't prepared well. I didn't think they were prepared well. And I thought that with the changes to coaching staff, with Halper leaving, Ryu coming in, I thought that Gen G would be in a better position internationally, with this being a small studio, not on a world's high level of pressure, I thought that would also be working with them as well, but clearly not. Because, I mean, on the other side of it, again, this is not detracting from the series, but Genji were... They had some crazy individual underperformances too. For instance, you know, you look at game 1, one of the most important moments in that game was Genji has full topside priority. And, you know, Galio's pushed Aurora off the wave, Renekton is in top river, and this is at 6 minutes. Why is that important? Because the Scuttle Crab that spawns at 6 minutes should, if everything's gone well in jungle, give the winning jungler of that smite fight over the Scuttle level 6. When you're playing champions like Shinzao, like Pantheon, as you were in that game, level 6 obviously very, very important. And Canyon just falls asleep at the wheel. He has priority, and he just doesn't bully Skewmond off from the top side of the map. No one does. He tries to rush down Scuttle. Skewmond walks up through the banana brush through top river, smites it, gets level 6. About 30 seconds later, Canyon's gone back into his own jungle to get himself level 6 off his own camps. Skewmond goes back into his own side of the jungle, but instead of going Gromp down to Wolves, he goes on to Wolves, then skips going Gromp, and then kills Dura and bot side River, because Genji have not tracked enemy jungle. They have not got level 6 first and able to bully off Pantheon from top side. They lose another free kill, and the game snowballs out of control. It's a real mess. Genji skip a step. They don't know what to do afterwards because they're so used to kind of just following the flowchart that they just fall out of contention there. So that's just a huge skipped step. Skewmond punishes, gets ahead of the game. Game's falling apart there. And this is actually after already the bot lane's kind of fallen apart as well, because there's one part where Canyon really... You remember that point where Canyon sat in that pixel brush? I think it's the first kills of the game when Labrov gets the hook onto Ruler out of the brush. Realistically, Canyon just needed to walk down, W the wave, push it in, and just make sure he stood there as the 3-man unit. He sits in pixel brush, the hook lands, and they die. Like, Canyon has an awful game 1. Go on to game 2, that's the Vayne top game from Keane. Really, the game losing play is when they try and get that pick onto Labrov just outside of blue buff, and they see a teleport coming behind them, and Keane, I don't think, recognizes that in time, and he rolls forwards to continue the play. If he rolls backwards and doesn't get hit by the Brawn passive, it's still not good, but it's not game losing. And then, of course, after that as well, the typical Genji build disaster where they don't build any damage to deal with HP stackers, even though you have a Vayne, and like Ahri should have gone Leandries as well. Definitely hurt them. And then you look at game 3, and it's like Keane is the only person who's really connected to the server on the Gwen. So every single game, someone makes awful game-changing plays. And I suppose, like, there are definitely some moments where people do have standouts as well. Like, I think Keane's Gwen in game 3 was really good. I thought that Chovy's Ahri was actually pretty good despite the build thing as well. But yeah, I mean, both things can exist at the same time. G2 very, very well prepped, very good at punishing, better drafts, better play. But on the other side, Genji, I don't think they were prepped very well. And every single person needs to put their hand up and say, I made that individual mistake. I needed to do better.
Yeah, I think one of the interesting things as well is not just G2's form, but also G2's conscious decision to actually change their playstyle. I mean, I don't think this is something that's actually been talked about that much yet, but BB's just playing weak side now. Like, he's literally just playing weak side.
Don't worry, it's been talked about. I tweeted it out immediately.
Okay. But it's like,
I seen it.
It's like, but to me, even though, again, obviously this event will, live long in the memory for EU fans, or hopefully it won't, because hopefully, EU goes on to do things that just make this irrelevant. But whatever, like, as promising and as awesome as this event was from an EU perspective, to me, it's also a little bit frustrating from the sense of, like, why wasn't this fucker just put on perma weak side for like the last 6 years of his career, by the way?
What,
like,
Broken Blade?
Yeah, like why is this guy ever trying to do his stupid silver bullet shit that works once in a blue moon in Europe, but has never done anything internationally? Like, what else could we have seen? Because it even though in theory you might think, it doesn't help free up Skewmond because obviously you're ceding pressure in top lane if you're playing weak side, it actually does give him more freedom because he can play it. That actually helps the jungler. If your weak sider can actually play weak side,
he looks
yes.
so much more comfortable with that role too, really.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. And of course, like, we do need to talk specifically as well about Skewmond because obviously, it's fun to be hyperbolic and throw things out there. Although I do think all the people who are like, oh, well, see, Skewmond isn't the best because Jun is the best. I still think Skewmond's like one of the best players in the world. He might be the best jungler in the world just because Jun prepped really well for him. BLG as a team dealt with him really well. They have better players on their team as well. Like, it works both ways, guys. Like, his mid laner's Knight. Like, Caps is a decent player, but he's not Knight. Like, I think
twice.
Well, yeah, sure, but I think Skewmond is unbelievable, and I just wanted to talk about him for a little bit, obviously, because this is something that gets discussed a lot as well. I can't remember if I tweeted about this or if I was going to and decided not to. But I think Skewmond is the only player who's come out of Europe in the last count, however many years, who has a legitimate chance if he plays long enough to go past Caps as the Western Go. Purely from a talent perspective, and obviously he would need a longevity perspective. But think of it like this, Keire. Caps, at 0 moments in his career, was the best mid. Never. He was never ever the best mid. I know it's different. I know it's different because obviously, if Messi plays right wing, then it's kind of stupid to say you were never the best right winger because the best player ever played right wing, right? Like it's not apples to apples, obviously.
Yeah.
But I would also probably say Caps has never been the second best mid, or hold your breath, might not have ever been the third best mid in the world. Maybe he was, maybe, but it would be contentious at that point. And again,
2019 is between him and Rookie, basically.
But yeah, the devil's in the details, of course. But my point is, like, I think, and by the way, I'm not saying Skewmond is not the de facto best jungler in the world, but I'm saying if this is what we're getting out of him currently, he could be. Like, he could end up being that. And time will tell. Again, obviously it's odds off. I'm not saying I think Skewmond will go down as a Western Go, but this is the only guy who is going to challenge Caps for that title.
I unpacked it a little bit on Nymaera's stream to make it interesting. Is Skewmond a top 5 player, not position, top 5 player in the world right now?
Oh,
right? And if he's not, that means G2's just made the finals of an international event without any top 5 players. When was the last time that happened? DRX had fucking Deft on it, by the way. Deft's a top 5 player ever.
Yeah, but not in the world at that moment in time, though, probably.
I actually think
incredible at that event. They couldn't give him Ezreal or Caitlyn, mate. They had the permaban bot.
No, I think Skewmond. I think you can make an argument that Skewmond is top 5 in the world, right? I mean,
but
he's
definitely probably top 5 in the world at the time. But
yeah. I think you can make the argument, right? Because I think based on this, I mean, there's a couple of things which are coinciding, right? Which is that anyone's legend just downswung like hell during playoffs. We didn't get to see whether Tarzan would be able to best Shin or Skewmond. Then again, he's not on that form right now, and actually during playoffs, Tarzan wasn't good enough. So currently, yeah, he's not in the top 5. So I think top 2 junglers, I think, were Shin and Skewmond. I think Canyon fell off a cliff. I think that the Raptor, while good, was beaten by both Shin and Skewmond. So we have the direct head-to-head there in best of 5. That is a very hard thing to argue against. So I think both of them are top 2 junglers. And then, I mean, Bin is probably the best player in the world, so he's definitely up there. Who else would you put from other roles in their top ones?
You've got
Chovy.
So you've got Chovy, Knight, Bin, BDD. Then I don't know anyone else who was more consistent than Skewmond over the period up to this point in time.
BDD in this split? BDD wasn't as good this split, right?
He's still crazy.
I'm just throwing out the
right,
names,
sure.
right? So you've got options are like Canyon and Keen, right? Because they still played like what they did like up to this point. Tarzan, right? Up to this point. There's not that many. So is he top? Like, if he's not top 5,
he's top 10. He's for sure. He's top 10.
I would say he's top 5. I actually think that in context now, I think Skewmond's top 5. I genuinely think he is. There are so few flaws in his play you can point out. I mean, the game where he played worst in finals. Do we want to move on to finals at this point? What's the plan?
We're just staying on Skewmond.
Because I think on Skewmond it's kind of
Skewmond's world.
Yeah, with Skewmond, because there's one game in finals where it was game 2 when he was on the Aatrox. That was the only game I thought he's been pretty much just destroyed in this game. And I think that was a team-wide effort from BLG to keep him on vision the entire time. It took a whole team to keep Skewmond down. I genuinely think this guy is just a freak of nature. I thought that before the event. I think during the event it was only emboldened that claim, where he was clearly the best player within Europe. I think you can put him top 5. I think you can.
I think
it sounds crazy, but like it's very impressive. And even then, if you don't believe it and you are like a Korean stan and every single person in the LCK is better than every single person that was born in the Western Hemisphere, like fair enough. Like, but there is no result. If you believe that, there is no result, right? Because that was something, by the way, that LS was, and I love LS, right? That was something he was really bad for, like proprieting. That was like, remember, obviously with you, Rex, the leader like thing of like the 50,
Yeah.
like you know what I mean, like those types of takes where you can understand where they're coming from, but the mathematics of it, like of how generous you have to be to every single Korean player and how ungenerous you have to be to every single Western player to come to those conclusions, can be quite extreme. But Skewmond's like you don't even need to come to Skewmond. They've literally got the games of like just annihilating Canyon, of absolutely dumpstering like Raptor, right? Now, yes, he's technically like his performances versus Yun technically aren't the best, in the context of like series results, but his individual play was still very good.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're going off actual, like, let's not even do it from a, like, who got the better of this jungle exchange or, like, whose team won. I think if you literally just look at the buttons he's pressing, he's the best jungler, by the way. Like, he is so aggressive, and his snap decision making is insane. Like, it's so fucking good. Even the stuff that seems like kind of obvious is easy to fuck up. Like when they're doing the Baron dance, for example, and Baron's really low, and will Skewmon go in, and there's fuck it, and he just EQs straight onto Knight and one shots him. Like just stuff like that. I don't think any other EU jungler's doing. By the way, like watching that, I was like, this is just different. It's just different. It's like it's the perfect decision in the perfect moment, and they literally win a 4v5 fight because Skewmond is the smartest player in that situation. Like I don't know. Like to me, he is just.
Well, so this actually goes on to an important point because literally just before we recorded this, got into a bit of like a Twitter back and forth with Vega V2, who like my take was effectively junglers shouldn't be playing, or the teams at this event are not ones which are kitted out to be playing stuff like Mundo and slower roll, less agency for your jungle champions. Because of precisely what you're talking about there, Rich, in terms of that snap decision making. I think that there are a bunch of teams at this event with Shun, Inspired, obviously Skewmond as well, Raptor, and Junja as well. Most of the teams at the event really needed snap decision making for players to continually force the pace of the game forwards through jungle. And I think that you're absolutely right. Skewmond is one of the best players in the world at doing just that. And having stuff like Jarvan, Pantheon, Shinzao to just pull the trigger and start a fight was really important. Now, in terms of why that came about, I would imagine it's a lot of follow-on effects from role quests coming in, and actually meaning that lanes have to kind of stay in lane a little bit more, and supports on Enchanter duty have less of that themselves. Because lanes in the early game have to stay in lane and pull less triggers, I really think it's fallen more into junglers to do that again, as opposed to Worlds, where with the like what was the timer when you went for the lane swap, like 4 or 5 minutes, you could potentially go do it after that point, and then playing around stuff like Atakan, so it felt like the game was a little bit slower and then really came alive around the 20 to 25 minute mark. I think that junglers at this event really needed that go button consistently from the early game throughout. Pretty much every jungler that tried to play slower junglers struggled quite a lot. Even stuff like the Sejuani, which I thought would be a bit better later on in the series, didn't work that well. And precisely what you're saying there, Rich, I think Skewmond's ability, which he's also talked about off stream as well, in terms of saying that he has grown into being more of a captain and a leader for the team, I think really showed through with the picks and the way that he gave himself agency to always have the ability to go forwards.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for G2 as well, is Skewmond being on agency. That's like so important. And by the way, whether he's like top whatever player in the world, he's the best J4 player in the world, I'll tell you that much. His J4 is ludicrous. He knows that champion's limit so well, it's crazy. And every time, he's like one of these players where, obviously, I'm not one of these people who every time I see a fight, like as it's approaching, like, you know, I see the lines of the Matrix in slow-mo and I can see every single summoner and I know the series of events that's going to happen. I'm kind of watching it like a fan in real time, like, oh no, like, I don't know what's going to happen. The amount of times Skewmond goes in and I'm like, is this good? It's always good, by the way. Spoiler alert. It's always good. Like, whenever it looks bad, it's always good. Whenever it looks good, it's even better than whatever it looked like. Like, he just knows everything. Like, again, this isn't unique to him. All professional players do the calculations in their head much better than I do. But he is just so good at judging what he can do. Like, he'll just one-shot 80 carries, like, just sat in a bush, because he just knows that on his last base, that means he can one-shot them. And he just does it. There's no fear. It's just pure agency, W key, go button, but it's all controlled. It's not out of control chaos or whatever. So, yeah, I mean, Skewmond is a joke.
Yep, sorry, Joe.
No.
I can't pick up on two narrative points. First of all, this is the standard of results. Obviously, it's like shot in the moon a wee bit of like justifying the like yike removal in terms of like domestic to international. These are the types of results that like when you make
Yes.
that move and you talk about international success, this is international success. Making it out of the fucking groups at Worlds and losing a BO5 0-3 is not international success. I don't care what you say. This is international success. Now you didn't win something, but you've done something very special and you came close, and you can take that and try and do something with it, right? These are the results that you're talking about. So now you can now point to this as a data point and go, that, you know what I mean? I think the whole thing of getting out of Worlds with the Swiss groups and who you draw and trying to avoid Asian teams and make it through without meeting, I think that's all bullshit. I think if you draw anyone in Swiss, you should be going, we can beat them. And now G2 should be saying that. No matter who you draw, and any MSI, EWC, you should never be going, oh, we got the Korean first team though. So what? Beat them.
Yeah.
Because that's the standard. You should never. That's the standard of like BLG, and I've always hated this. Of like, you have to beat someone good to win something. You know what I mean? Like you can't just.
You can't dodge. Yeah.
Yeah, you can't dodge, and you shouldn't want to dodge. You know what I mean? You should want to do it the hard way, because if you do it the hard way, you get results like this, where even if you don't win, everyone will point to this. Like it's something funny. BLG has just won this, but EU fans will probably talk about this more in terms of the context of G2 because it's more important to them because of the lack of international success. Now I know that's like regional metrics, but it is like a funny anecdote. And the second of all is, this raises to my suspicion, and I've been saying this all the way back. I mean, you can talk about it when me and Rich done EuroLeague years ago. Jungle in particular in Europe, I've always said this, if you stuck European junglers, the best European junglers, on Asian teams, you would call them the best junglers. You take away the nameplate and they could speak the language. Jankos, fucking Razork, Yike, fucking Elyoya, Skewmond. I've said this before, I said, if you put Elyoya on fucking BLG last year, he would have fixed the Jun and Wei problem. Like, Elyoya would have fixed it. Like, he would have fixed that problem. He was a better player than both of them. He's just not Asian, and folks just don't want to say that.
Well, no. BLG is a specific one because they needed a specific kind of chemistry. Like, legitimately, it's just Shun's role and nothing else, because he's the most happy-go-lucky guy you can get in that role, and that really helps like smooth over the internal comms.
No, but that's what I was saying, like, at the time, in terms of, like, obviously we found out all that stuff, like, afterwards. But what I'm saying in terms of, like, the performance at the time, that's what I was saying. Loads of these junglers, if you stuck them on, like, the bet, like, bro, Canyon's second half of his career has been, like, so dodgy, because he is unbelievably excellent, and he does do such amazing carry performances, right? But, man, his fucking laners are Kane and Chovy. Like, Canyon earns the right to never have losing lanes, but nobody else gets that. It's like Jun has, like, earned the right to basically never have losing lanes, right? Okay, Skewmond doesn't have that. He has like 1.5 permanent winning lanes. Caps wasn't just fucking winning every lane for free. BB certainly wasn't, and his bot lane done very well. You know what I mean? So he was doing that without the blessings that they had. So in context, like, what he was doing was some miraculous stuff. It's an all-time international performance. It really is.
Yeah. But obviously, they did end up coming up just short of winning the tournament because they played BLG in the final. Now, of course, they played them before the final as well, and got smashed. So even though coming off these two victories, you might think, well, if you beat LCK 1 and 2 seed, surely you're going to be favoured in the final. I think most people still thought it just wasn't a great matchup for G2. Like, we'd already spoken about it before. Like, stylistically, the mid matchup, even if you think Chovy's a better player than Knight, which he probably is, actually the way Knight plays League of Legends is kind of more oppressive to someone like Caps. And they just also, as Nymaera mentioned, seem to respect G2 more, to the tune of actually prepping for them more than Gen G did, very possibly. So yeah, Keire, what were your initial thoughts on this series? I mean, going into it, did you think, off the back of the Gen G win, what sort of probability did you give G2 of getting revenge on BLG?
I thought it was, like, really low, which is, and I even said that, like, here's the thing, it's, like, all based on, like, would BLG drop them? Because when they played, I think BLG was up here and G2 was, like, down here. And from that loss, G2 propelled themselves to, like, here. You know what I mean? Now, BLG could, like, drop down and G2 could win. It was within their grasp. The feat was within their grasp. But the problem is the drop down didn't really happen. Only basically one player dropped down, which was, like, Knight. He didn't have, like, a particular, like, great final.
Which is crazy, actually, by the way.
Yeah, as I said, he had, like, a 5 out of 10, like, final for, like, Knight standards, right? And it was still, like, 3-1. But, like, there was as you've seen in the previous BO3, if Knight blows out Caps, like it's just a massacre.
After game one, did you think that G2 were going to win, or did you still think BLG probably had him?
I thought that the top lane matchup was still looking kind of rough.
No,
like,
I
Bin
felt the
very
same.
nearly like 1v9 just by himself.
I mean, that win was kind of ropey. Like, obviously, it's really good that G2 got it over the line. And I do think going forward for them, I'm really glad they weren't blown out 3-0 again. That would have been a kind of like hype dampening a bit. I'm glad it was like a competitive series. But the nature of that win, even though, you know, Caps and Skewmond were incredible in that game, was a bit disturbing. Like, they felt like that game was won 3 times over. But yeah, that top diff was rough.
A little bit of like to talk about that, like that opening game. You know, like BLG, you know, they've got their own problems to iron out. One of the really interesting things was really a highlighting of Chinese excellence, like Skewmond's excellence, in terms of evaluating not only his team's win conditions. There's like a 8-minute segment where Skewmond blows 4 people's flashes and kills 2 people.
Using Mega Cone on stuff like at Viper in mid lane, that was insane actually.
Yeah, bro, that might be like the best 8 minutes of like an EU player has ever played. Like, it was absolutely incredible. Caps gets like a massive lead overnight because they flip a river fight, and it kind of goes like poorly, and he then takes that Aurora lead and he's super oppressive with it.
Oh, that was super that was super close, by the way. Basically what happened was, like, BLG know that they're going to get the first kill, and then a couple of very, very close things happen, because they get the kill onto Skewmond, because like they could have technically burst out Caps, but he had flash, so it was a bit dicey as to whether they'd finish the kill, whereas Skewmond didn't have flash, despite the fact that he had more HP. They thought they could go for him. So they trade Skewmond for Knight. Shun misses the wall stun onto Caps by about 3 pixels. It is incredibly short. And then On tries to gift the kill to Shun after flashing and then going an auto-attack by not auto-attacking the second time. If he auto-attacks there, he gets the kill, Viper turns up, Caps doesn't get his next skill off, and it's basically 2 kills not to G2 and 2 more to BLG, because it's likely that Labrov dies after and Caps would have died in that scenario. In that situation, I'm pretty sure if Shun and On, and I don't actually think this is a miscalculation. I think, well, it was a miscalculation. I think they were trying to ride the knife's edge, and they were very, very close to doing it. If that works out in their favor, BLG probably stomp through game 1, because Caps doesn't come away with the huge amounts of kills, dies early, and then Shun and On get to kind of close out the map as well. That literal two very, very close misjudgments probably saved the game for G2, but credit to them, very few teams can outdo BLG in those early 3v3 fights. They're actually very similar teams, G2 and BLG, in the way that they look for those early plays. The fact that they won that, pretty much won them that game, it was fantastic from them.
And just to unpack this, it's one thing to get a lead. It's another thing to, like, you know, use it properly and hold on to it. Skewmond blows Knight's flash almost before every single objective, so Knight can't actually use, because the power is you like drop the Annie combo on the Aurora and she can't dodge it because it locks on. But Knight doesn't ever have the flash, so they can't get the gold lead off of Knight. Get the gold lead off of Caps. I think BLG, and we've seen this a lot in the LPL. They play a lot of some of the late game spaces with too much risk. Like they take massive risks that they don't really need to. And if they just kind of like slowed down a bit and just kind of assessed the map and took like a breather, they would actually realize and they're in stronger positions. But that's really hard decision making to make. And BLG have always been like a go first like kind of team, particularly like, you know, Onge and Knight, very aggressive like players. So, you know, G2 was kind of trying to match that tempo, and they did do a really good job across the series of trying to match it. And then all of a sudden, in 2 of the games, they matched it and exceeded it. And one of them, they managed to convert it. Game 4, obviously, they got the game back after the topside flip. I won't unpack all the games individually. But generally, I thought it was, you know, Caps got given the, you know, the LeBlanc and Galio matchup, played it aggressively, but I had my own problems in terms of like how it going. But he got the solo kill, and he got the solo kill into the Casio matchup. So, you know what I mean? I think Caps had like a really good day in the office, and he punished Knight for like Knight's aggressive style. Basically, Knight is the end product of Humanoid's style of laning, where he's going to make you trade and exhaust resources, so these are both going to be low health and sitting on a knife's edge, and then it will like flip one way or the other. And he's so good at like flipping it, but Cap's got the better of him.
Yeah. I think one thing that was like thematically interesting, we talked before about how Broken Blade just randomly started playing weak side, which probably should have been doing the whole time. Bot lane also just randomly started playing well. I think going into this, at least on an international context, because obviously Hans Labrov is still one of, if not the best bot lanes in Europe. Going into the international, I think we all felt this could be a weak point that might get exploited and might actually be game losing. Like some of these bot lanes at the event are really, really strong, and they might just lose games through bot. Somehow this just turned out to just not be the case. I mean, I actually think, even though I don't fully disagree with you, Nymaera, I actually think even in the first BLG series, I actually thought in lane, until game 3, they were actually completely fine. I don't think it was like a lost condition for them at all against in the 3-0 against BLG. I thought they were actually playing fine and that they weren't.
The Ashe Shen lane kind of ruined them, so I'm not sure about that game in particular. And then obviously the game 3 when they played the Caitlyn Milio, that was the biggest mistake in the entire series. Where actually my problem in that series was I don't think, and we saw them really adapt with this too. I don't think G2 set up very well for Skewmond in the early days of the tournament very well. And of course, that's what ended up being what got them 2 finals, really. And particularly in game 3, I felt like they spent the first 2 games of the series not finding a way to get Skewmond to the game very well. They managed to do that with the Trundle flash over the wall, and then they were going to gank bot lane. Labrov walks... Well, so the problem is, though, 2v2, they get absolutely fucking mashed. Hans loses both summoners before Skewmond can get bot lane. And then Labrov is like, well, Skewmond's coming bot lane. I got to do something now. Then he makes a mistake in walking up. And Labrov has got this issue where sometimes he understands the play that needs to be made, but then kind of like skips a step or two and finds himself in a very dangerous scenario. So in this case, as Skewmond is walking bot lane after stealing red buff, after flashing over the dragon pit to try and get ahead of the game, he walks up into a brief 1v2 versus Nymaera Lulu, whose level 1, level 2 damage is utterly obscene. And that basically gets Labrov killed. Skewmond is like, well, I've used my flash. I actually can't flash onto the enemy bot lane for like an auto charm porto for like press the attack. I will just die. So the mistakes of Hans and Labrov undo the early game plan and the hard work of Skewmond. And that was purely a 2v2 issue. So I actually disagree. I think the 2v2 was a big problem in that series.
Sure. I guess I was more looking at it from like a pure laning perspective, but it's all part and parcel.
That was a laning thing in that. That was literally the first 2 minutes of the game.
But like, regardless, I mean, the point is that they obviously fixed their issues going into the back end of the tournament. But my question, I guess, is just why or how? Like, what changed that suddenly they were not just no longer a massive lose condition, but actually kind of a win condition? Like, how does that even happen?
You'll unpack that, Nymaera?
Sorry, say that one again. I was just looking at some stats on this.
Yeah, no, I'm saying, like, obviously they went from a losing, whatever the cutoff point is. Let's just agree that actually, yeah, even in the first BLG series, they weren't playing well. Going forward, they almost completely flipped it from being, you know, a potential losing condition to part of the win condition. How does that even happen?
Well, I mean, I was thinking about it being a lot about the picks, but honestly, looking back through, because that's what I was probably looking at, actually.
It's all the same picks, I think, most of the way through.
They're still picking for prior 2v2. I just think they just played 2v2 better. I mean, they just got their shit.
But how? But how? Like, it's
just a great question.
No, I'll tell you right now. Okay, here's from my memory of the tournament. One of the big turnaround things, right, is Labrov taking better, like, management of his resources. So for me, Labrov would, like, overstep and get himself into these like aggressive pockets, and you actually seen him punished for this in the final a little bit. But particularly against GENG, you would see him enter these really aggressive pockets. You deploy like some resources, like some cooldowns or whatever, right? And then like be able to like back off, you know what I mean, from it, right? And he would like keep on doing this and cycling, and it's this knife's edge that he's on that sometimes in LEC he gets like caught or like killed, right? But it was beginning to go his way, right? But it was more in sync with what Hans Samo was doing. You know what I mean? And when we talk about bot lane, a lot of the tempo and the control of the lane, the ADC tends to control the lane in terms of like the minions and the push and the pull. But it's the support player that tends to control like the all-in potential. You know what I mean? It's like you can't all-in if like the Nautilus doesn't hit his hook. you know what I mean, right? But if the Nautilus hits his hooks, okay, but how the Nautilus goes about hitting the hooks is completely different. Are you going to play on the minion? Okay, so sometimes you'll be in front of like an enemy of a minion, right? And people will like keep the ADC will keep in line with you, right? And then what you're trying to do is that minion dies, and then you throw the hook through the minion. You know, stuff that you've seen like throughout it, right? And then the other person is moving with those, right? So what sometimes Lavrov will do, and you've seen this on Nautilus and Alistar, he'll aggressively walk up, look for the people to like move like onto him and start like putting like skill shots onto him, right? Okay, but what he's actually doing is he's just looking to over engage and like health trade in like a serious way. Something On's amazing at doing on Alistar as well, but it's way more in sync.
That's why I think On might be the best Alistar player in the world, and has been for the last split.
But it's way more in sync. Like, go look at how in sync Hansama and Lavrov are in the MF like Nautilus game. You know what I mean? Like the what is it? Where is it? I had it here.
It was game 1 versus Gen G, the MF Nautilus.
Yeah, the game 1 versus Gen G.
Oh, by the way, that was like just one other thing there. It's a really good answer to the Ashe Seraphine in some ways, but I think that Gen G really messed up. I don't think you should ever get away with an early MF pick because you just lock like 2 tanks into her, and her bullet time just doesn't win fights anymore. And I think locking the Renekton instead of a Cassandre really hurt Gen G in that draft.
And the other one that I think is like also getting like Lavrov, like obviously one of the big like selling points of Lavrov is this duality player, where one of the rare EU players that is as good at engaged champions as he is at enchanters.
Yeah.
And I think this tournament is where we've seen BDS engage Lavrov really shine. You had the big Braum disengage ult and the choke. You had the big Braum stun onto like key targets. You had the Nautilus game. You had the game 2 what was it? It was the Nami game.
Yeah.
What game was that? The Nami game? Was that game? What was the Nami game? Was that against Beer? Wait a second. I need to pick out this game. It's one of the best games.
I think that was versus BFX, wasn't it?
They
played them against Gen G as well.
No, the Lavrov game 2 against BFX, Lavrov, he goes 4-7 and 22 as Nami. He is the best player in the server by miles. He smurfs this game, by the way. Even again, scoreline's not that sexy, but what he is doing, the amount of bubbles that he hits, the amount of CCs that he hits, how long he's alive, getting the healing out, dipping into bushes, right? Making the person come into the bush to follow him, walking out to the bush, throwing the stun over his head after he flashes over. Beautiful stuff, right? And that's a player that G2 like needs to like come up, you know what I mean? And like hopefully continue to be as consistent, right? The other thing, Rich, that we've seen, Hansama. Hansama has had there's an international narrative. Is Hansama as good at internationals as it is domestic? And I think he's a bit one of those players who's a bit hard done by. It's a bit 50-50. I think he's got some shockers, and I think he's got some really good ones, right? The start of this, it was looking a bit like a shocker. It had the hallmarks of a shocker. Little bit of mispositioning, dying on midsection. Ironed out instantly. Again, that loss to BLG was like a factory reset button to like G2. You know what I mean? It was like you ironed out every problem. You know what I mean? It was like you lost so badly, right? The only place you can go up, you know what I mean? Because you get that thing. And that's what makes these different types of tournament formats like so fun. So for me, what it really...
Imagine if it was single elim, by the way, and they were just out after that series, and we're like, fucking hell, why didn't we send MCOY?
MCOY, exactly. And that's what I'm... You know, to me, and it's good to talk about that, and I know the last 5 minutes I've just been speaking can just be like hanging down to just play better, right? But what's interesting about it is it isn't just like, oh, just play better caps or just solo kill them, right? Okay? What it is like you're taking players and plays that we've seen before, right? And you're being like, okay, that works in EU, do it against the top tier performance and execute. You know what I mean? And that's the difference. You know what I mean? What is good in one place can still be good in another. It's just having the confidence. I know that confidence is a terrible word, but sometimes that is as simple as what you need. You know what I mean? Rather than just like you've got like the 2v2 kill bot lane and you're not throwing CC, you're letting them just push you in for like absolutely no reason because their like name bar says Gen G ruler and he's a world champion. No, push your shit in, make him press buttons, make him press barrier, throw a hook at him, make him flash it. You know what I mean? Like make him be the best player in the world because he might fuck it up and he might die. And he did.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be
And
super.
so, for instance,
Go
that
on.
was a big thing I think for the Keen Vayne top game as well. Where actually, Keen's played a couple of Vayne top games before, but he clearly, I actually don't think understood the Cassante matchup in that game. Where he so like I'm a Vayne top player, so sue me. I play range top laners. I make top laners
That
out
does
themselves.
sound like a suable offense, to be fair. So
Yeah, I play like I reached my highest ever rank on like Quinn and Vayne. It was funny as hell. But in that matchup, what you need to do is hold onto your Q as the Vayne for as long as possible. Where if he then like dashes forwards and looks to tag you with a Q slow or a W, then you Q backwards. But you actually have enough threat from your W just by sitting and regularly auto attacking. But you just Q defensive. You can't really stop his W that well because as soon as he starts channeling it, your condemn is kind of useless. But he was consistently queuing in front of the Cassante, which allows him to then walk him kind of go either for the EQ or the EW combo, depending on how he wants to play the mind game. And that definitely became very obvious. Remember in that time where he died in the 2v1 dive bot lane? That was completely avoidable if he just doesn't roll in front of him. He just rolls backwards. It would have been fine. He had flash at that point too. He had exhaust. There was no world in which he should die there. He just greeted for the extra auto attack. And amongst some of the team fights as well, where we did a bit of Vayne spotting, where he just rolled into 2 carries at once and dies. Vayne can win a 1v1 against any carry, even while on hit Varus gets a bit weird, but you do pack the exhaust, so you can win that as well. And it is much to what Keire is saying. You have to kind of sit there and while the Vayne should have options to deal with that matchup, you have to force them to see if they actually understand those options, and maybe you're in a good enough situation where they don't. And I think in that case, actually, BB had a really good understanding of like, if he's going to disrespect me like that, I'll make it work. And I think that BB, one of the biggest things for me is that he took these matchups where he didn't technically just have like the winning matchup, when he was like the Shen versus the Gwen, for instance, as well in the game 3, where he's like, well, I'm just going to force them to make plays. And at the end of the day, I'm going to be more useful at some point in team fights. And it turned out that Keen actually didn't get enough out of the individual matchups, and it ended up being a big difference, I think.
Yeah. And if, they try and stop me from making the plays, I'll just solo kill Chovy for cancelling my TP.
Oh my god, I can't believe that Chovy did that, by the way. That was nuts. Well, Chovy didn't even lane very well himself, If you look at the very early levels of his Azir versus the Akali, look, okay, I think the Ahri laning was fine, because you're meant to be behind 10, maybe more CS against the Victor. He stayed even, and he actually made some plays. That was great up until the build. I think the build was really not good. The Galio was like, he died greeting for a ward in top river, which is something which both him, Canyon, Duro, and Keen all did at some point in that series, by the way. They literally all died, tried to cheat a ward, and GT punished them for it because they had no right doing what they did. But you look at the Azir game, where on the very first few levels, there's a first cannon wave. Like, Caps just goes beyond the wave, has a losing HP advantage, but Chovy's like, well, I need the cannon for my first back. If I lose first cannon in the game, my first base is like going to be kind of shit. So he uses his Q to farm the cannon as Akali's like whacking him with electrocute. And then when he's like, typically when Akali is against Azir, when you put your shroud down, typically the Azir has a soldier in the middle of it. So when you pop out for an auto attack or a Q, you can just automatically auto attack you and just kind of get a free trade back. He didn't have a W charge up, and he uses Q to farm the cannon. So Azir Akali gets the trade for free, and that happened a lot. And that's just not mistakes which Chovy does very often. And he just does that in game 3, in an elimination game in an international event. It was a really bad laning game from him, and then he died in the side lane, which meant that he couldn't take turret, couldn't get gold, couldn't scale up into the game. Was it likely he was going to get outscaled by a Kog'Maw Lulu anyway? Yes, but it doesn't help. You have to do your work too.
Yeah. Just choky things, am I right, Keire? Anyway, back to BLG. Obviously, they were on the other side of the rift, and we have to talk about why they have G2's number. What was it? Obviously, it's easy to say Bin's just way better at League of Legends than Broken Blade. Was that the main reason, or how do you view it?
Bro, it's the fucking Doran problem. Like, it's funny because to prove it, Ben had to step down and become a worse player so that T1 could get the year where Doran's not a problem plus Fearless, right? Because bro, I've always said this, right? I actually personally think losing that finals to T1 sent like Ben reeling. By the way, like I actually just like crushed his like
on a confidence level, yeah.
Yeah, I just think T1 made Ben like a bad player for an additional year because he like Aura got like that smashed. But and a funnier note is like this is the problem. The thing is, like Ben is still technically worse than Fearless because it just kind of depends on like how, like without lane, like so you could lane swap. Then also is like how good are the actual carry champions? Like sometimes Nar and Camille and what's like the other one? Like Jace or Kennen, they're not, just not that good. Or Renekton, right? Okay, they're just not good for whatever reason at like the time. And the other options can be like playing to like top side just really isn't viable because the ADCs are so like toxic. Like, oh yeah, you want to play like Renekton? Yeah, good luck playing Renekton and checks notes. Zeri Yumi meta. Yes. You have if you don't flash insta kill her, you die. Brilliant. So it depends like how the game looks like. But when the game's relatively normal and Ben's in good form, it's really hard to have just an island weak side guy, because he's just gonna murder them. He's gonna just pick like Gwen's, Camille's, Nars, Jax's, and it's gonna be 10 CS, then 20, then 30, then 40, then he's up a level, 2 levels, 3 levels, then your turret's gone, then he's starting to take jungle camps, then he's pulling 2, 3, 4 people to side lanes, he's walking you through the base. Like, it just becomes such a problem, and he's good at team fighting on these champs. That's like another like
Well,
big
he is
ticket
now.
issue.
That's the
Yeah.
big thing which changed in LPL finals, because the big thing which Bin did is like, even in the upper bracket finals against JDG, so not the final round, but the one before that, he got something like what 3 to 5,000 individual gold lead on Kennen over Renekton, and like Kennen with that kind of gold lead is meant to be just like a warhead waiting to just obliterate the entire enemy team, particularly because this meta right now doesn't have many exhausts. You can be very, very impactful as a top laner on your team fight engage, and he actually struggled to do that. Then in LPL finals, we finally saw him on stuff like Gwen or Gnar or whatever, get to the point where like he would individually diff so hard and then also transfer that into a lead. For the last year and a half, so since start of 2025, or realistically since about World Semis, actually, because his quarterfinals were great and the semis and finals were off, and then losing finals, then he just nosedived in 2025 and was just not the same player up until very recently. That was when he finally started transferring leads into wins again. I think, remember a couple of podcasts ago, and for those who remember our episodes around Worlds, I was saying last Worlds was probably the lowest level of individual top lane talent we've ever seen in the top cut of an international event. Now, they had different skills in terms of fighting from economic deficits and playing really kind of like low gold builds. So Flandre was really good, Doran was really good. Players who could do a lot with very little. Suddenly, you bring in the role quests, you fix laning into a certain place, and particularly if you finish your top lane role quests early, you get such an XP lead that you can turn that into just obliterating leads. Suddenly you have players like Bin coming out into the fore again, which, I mean, it makes me wonder what's going to happen with Zeus, in next split as well. Can he try and make that again? What happens if the Shy comes back? Is he going to try and play like that style again? Does that change anything for any other teams across the world? But yeah, Bin is actually getting to the point where if you gave him a winning matchup, it did just feel like it was inevitable that he would do something incredible with it in a way that he wouldn't have done even just a couple of months ago.
BLG has always been this is how the way BLG is. How good can a team be if you have 2 of the top 5 solo laners in the world on the same team? But actually, like the solo laners are like the functional carries, not like Gen G in terms of like they're trying to make a holistic like total team coverage, and in terms of like very skewed warped sense of like Ben and Knight are the best players on the team. Every player knows that Ben and Knight are the best players on the team. They will give their lives for Ben and Knight to have like good games, or vice versa. And BLG, it's kind of weird that it took Viper joining the team, who's like a top 3 ADC of all time, for them to become more Knight and Ben focused. Because on the Elk lineup, I would actually say
Elk was really focused on.
Yeah, exactly.
Viper's not.
Yeah, and now it's taken Viper being there for them to become this really solo lane focus. So I think that's like a big part. And also obviously like you've seen what it was like when G2 were a little bit worse and Ben and Knight were in top form, and how disgusting the games can be. Like where they beat G2, and I'm not going to pretend that was like the best version of G2, but like come on, like it was like solo kills everywhere, 5,000 gold leads in every solo lane, 11,000 gold at like 25 minutes, game's over, depressing, unhappy gaming, like Knight and Ben are both emojiing like in the game, like all typing in all chat, like just laughing and stuff. Like it's just absolutely silly. And that's kind of the team that BLG was always supposed to be. But joining them now is you've now got On, who when we're talking about Nymaera, and he can unpack it all here. On has, and for me, is probably one of the most improved players. Not so much even just in terms of consistency, but not enough people I think talk about this. I think On is one of the most mechanically improved players I've ever seen compared to 2023 to like now,
Yes.
in terms of like how good he was, even at like a pro level. You know what I mean? So a pro level mechanics is all very very high. On's mechanical level and ability to execute from 2023 to now is absolutely incredible. And Jun has went from a very flawed but mechanically good player to now just a very excellently well-rounded jungler who, not without being on Xin Zhao, Kindred, or Wukong,
Or Nidalee.
or Nidalee. Nidalee was a more, but like for BLG was all about. I think Jun could be the best jungler in the world, or the best jungler in the server, on maybe like 5 or 6 picks that aren't even those, the ones that I just mentioned, which is a completely different conversation. So the supporting cast has risen up. Like in 2024, I wanted to kill Jun and On for how they played in the finals, right? But now,
there was a good reason why Shun was replaced in Summer 24 for Wei, and people will forget this because they made World Finals with Shun. But what Summer 24 was bad from Shun, and then 2025 actually was worse on JDG. Was like all over the place, and there were a lot of reasons for that. You know, Scout and a lot of other players definitely had different issues for that. But yeah, you know, you go back to 2023 and BLG, they made waves through like Shun, Elk, and On, who were like the BLG homegrowns, despite the fact that, you know, in 2024 as well, you know, they once again just threw money at some big players. Bin and Knight, Tabe came over obviously in 2023 as well. In the past, they brought over Uzi, they brought over a bunch of other players. BLG were the team that threw money at people to try and make super teams work, and it actually ended up being, I think, most important, their homegrown players, because obviously Shun and On were on some teams before that, but the ones which they kind of stuck with long term, to make a big difference to them. Yeah, I think Shun, a lot of the conversation around him was he's the glue guy, the chemistry guy, and obviously that's very, very important. But I think he's also just a world-class jungler, as you were saying. Like, this guy is genuinely just very, very good now. He's not just I'm going to lock in Kindred Nidalee, who I didn't even think they were his best champions anyway, personally. You know, looking back to it, you know, in fact, I got into a bit of like a back and forth with Yamato on a podcast at some point how actually I thought that actually Shun didn't get the Nidalee pass last year or the year before that, because actually it was like I had like Canyon, Kanavi, and like Tarzan who got the Nidalee pass. Basically no one else did, and he was like, well, what about Shun? I'm like, I don't actually think he's the best player of that, and I don't want to see him on that. I want to see him on stuff which kind of is a bit more of that AD bruiser. I want to see him on the Shun Zhao. I want to see him on the Jarvan, the Pantheon, the Poppy, stuff like that, and the Vi, of course, too. And I think that he's been fantastic at just kind of calling the shots at the right time. You go back, you know, half a year, you go back even to earlier in this split, and Shun, I think a lot of people look back at 23 and 24 and think about Shun going for dicey early invades, losing the invade against someone like Kanavi or Tarzan or Ona. Of course, that changed throughout the year. Actually, had some pretty good performances against Ona at MSIs, particularly, but not necessarily at Worlds, where I think a lot of people remember that, where he just die on the invade and things would fall apart. That doesn't even happen now. He's judging the invade so much better. The level 1s are so much better too. And I think the big thing about Shun is that he's very resilient. He might be the most resilient jungler in the world, where something goes wrong in the game, it's like, fine, whatever, we'll get him in the next skirmish. Like, he's the guy that just doesn't throw in the towel that way. And I think that's really helped BLG shake off shit early games if it does happen, but also have more confidence that the early game is going to work in general, and then work through that. I mean, game 1, you go back last year, if that level 2, level 3, whatever fight it was, the 3v3 around mid lane, if that had gone wrong half a year ago, BLG wouldn't have recovered from that when they had another jungler. I think with Shun they do, and I think that's a really important thing. And moving briefly on to On, you know, I made a tweet at the start of the event actually that On is the best litmus test for whether BLG are going to win or not, because I've seen them enough domestically, I've seen them enough when they're at their peak as well, where if On is confident, playing well, playing creatively, this guy is probably, mechanically, as Keire was saying, the one guy from LPL I think could rival or at least rattle a peak carrier. And I do genuinely think if On is at peak, he can at least be in the conversation for that. Do I think he'll be better than a peak carrier? Well, I don't think anyone's better than a peak carrier, you know? But On is like the one guy I think who would be in the same ballpark, because I think everyone else is just completely out of sight. And when On is on something like Alistair, flipping somehow unwinnable lanes, when he's making incredible plays on enchanters and engage supports, stuff like a Shen, yeah, he might die once or twice in lane. Who gives a fuck? Like, this guy's going to flip the rest of the game anyway. His consistency's up there as well, as Keire was saying. But yeah, I think that at peak mechanical stuff, you look at the way that he was playing Bard in some... Was it Bard in the semi-finals, the game one? He was doing insane stuff onto like Xiaoshu Jundra's jump forwards with like his defensive Bard ults. Like, On is just one of the best supports in the world right now. He's probably up... Yeah, he probably is the best support in the world based on how Keire fell off, and I think that he was the best support at the event. So I think Shun and On, absolutely massive shoutouts, and not just a solo lane team. Of course, Knight in the finals was absolutely not there on his best form. I think it was an ensemble performance.
An ensemble performance. Very good, Nymaera. Very good.
Yeah, I didn't even mean that, but sure, yeah, we'll go for that.
Anyway, what I want to know from you guys is, let's live, because right now, obviously, we're in an alternate reality. In actual reality, Genji did actually beat G2. I don't know if you saw that. So then they went on to play BLG in the final, or they will play them in the final. Who do you actually think would win that? Because obviously, we've talked a bit on your stream as well about how it's not just a binary, you know, power ranking of best team, where matchups matter. And how actually do you think that specific matchup, Keire, of BLG into Genji looks? Do you actually think BLG are the best team right now?
If Knight played like it did in the final versus Cavs against Chove, he would have got murdered. Even worse, probably. I don't know, like, it's hard to say. Like, Genji, obviously, like, let's just say, like, if Genji managed to like get by G2 and then they returned to form that we had seen at the tournament, I think they would have won the tournament rather handedly. But failing that, like, I also think it's kind of like scary. Like, the form Knight was in was like kind of scary for BLG.
Do you not think there was any like regional correction here? And what I mean by that is, like, obviously we watch these teams play in their domestic leagues and we make value assessments or value judgments rather on like how good players are relative, but it at the end ultimately it is somewhat speculative because we don't get to see the cross-regional stuff. Do you think it's possible that this past split BLG have actually just been playing better than Genji, but just stylistically? No. Okay,
not during the split. BLG's split was actually a little ropey. It's like we saw BLG played better League of Legends at this event than they did during the rest of the split. So for that view of it, I don't think so.
In 3 weeks, BLG threw 38k gold of leads.
Yeah. Like, remember when they lost that first? Remember when they lost that first game versus BFX? My immediate reaction was, that isn't even the biggest like BLG throw I've seen this month.
Bro, against JDG Gaming, they threw like 20k in 2 games. Like, bro, it was crazy. Like, this team like has like still got problems that have been more ironed out as they move forward. But here's the thing, and this is what again, when a team like Genji loses, you could talk about fucking any great team. Like, let's go. Like, let's take. I'm always like less forgiving them. Let's take T1 at 2024 MSI, where Knight's solo killing Faker, right, and Faker's having to play Zac. Do you think that's actually Faker's level? No, that is a period in time. You know what I mean? That is not the T1 that we had seen all year, right? That is like a period in time of like down like level and performance. Do you see what I mean? Yeah. And because of that, T1 suffered, and because of that, the series was quite warped, and T1 ended up losing to BLG because on that particular day, Faker in particular wasn't very good, and Bin and Knight were particularly excellent, and they ended up losing, and they got upset. Okay. I do not believe, and then in the World Finals again, it looked very, very close, right? But it looked very, very close with like some very fucking questionable plays from like Honor and Guma, and some very questionable draft decisions from the T1 staff, where I don't think they were kind of using their flexibility muscles. And again, they ended up winning on the day. But I could have pointed to BLG, and these things happen all the time because yes, for any given period, and it's what's great about Genji is their consistency. You can look at Genji week 1, week 2, week 3, playoffs, all that, and they're very much the same team all the time. And they do very similar archetypal things. And when they stop doing them, you know something's went wrong. We can only speculate what that is, but you can actually point, and it's not every time they lose, by the way, because sometimes things go wrong and they win. Because they're just that much better than other people. But you can actually point to the points in time and you go, that's it there, it's happening. You know what I mean? Like, there it is, it's going wrong. Like, there was that series that they won versus HLE, where they went to
The 4 games or whatever, yeah, with
yeah, right.
the Galio and Silas craziness.
No. Sorry, Gen G beat HLE,
Oh,
right?
sorry, right.
Sorry,
Yeah.
Gen G beat HLE. It was in last year where there was no
Oh, the
spring
quarterfinal,
playoff.
yeah.
Yeah,
Oh no,
do you know?
sorry, yeah. Sorry, winter this time. Sorry, I was thinking about Worlds. My bad. I was
Do you
still
know what I'm
World
talking
Spring.
about, Rich? Like they had the fake playoff where
Yeah,
actually
yeah, yeah.
T1 ended up going and Gen G
Yeah,
ended up
there
going
was
because
no winner. There was just
there was no
qualifying
Yes,
winner,
yeah.
right?
spots.
So
Yeah.
Gen G were the first seed, right?
Spring.
Okay.
Sorry, yeah, my bad.
Go watch game one, okay? And it's like Chovy's on TF and Zika is on Azir, right? Fucking Canyon throws the whole fucking game. G just like fucking throwing the whole game. It ends up going all the way like to game 5 and it's really, really close. And then the next again day, HLE play T1 and T1 just like 3-0 stomp them and just like sweep them out completely out, right? Bro, those HLE and Gen G team, like they were literally like a day apart.
Mm-hmm.
Explain that one to me. Because it's very, you can see when things aren't working and there's like problems within teams and when there's not. There was definitely problems against Gen G, particularly, in my opinion, from Keen, Canyon, and Ruler. Less so, but still existent for Chove and Duro, right? But how big they are and where they come from, that's really hard to like analyze. I think if Gen G had gone by G2, and they've been allowed to, iron out their problems, they probably would have returned to form. That is historically what we've seen from them. That they get by their bad spells rather quickly. That's why like Worlds is such like a pain
I
for
think
them.
if they were drafting the way that they did, I mean, put it this way, BLG are a pretty similar team to G2. I would imagine that I would have to imagine that Gen G overlooked or misprepared towards G2, and I wonder if they scraped through that series whether they could. Part of me just wonders if they weren't taking G2 seriously enough and they would have taken BLG seriously enough. That is a worry, and I don't know if I mean, they would never admit to that, right? Because that'd be very, very embarrassing, I suppose. But yeah, I'd imagine it would have been much closer. But in a lot of ways, like BLG have a lot of the same strengths that G2 have, except that they have a more lane dominant top laner and a more shoddy late game on the whole.
Do you not? The thing is, with the whole maybe they didn't take G2 too seriously. Do you not think surely that would have changed a little bit after G2 absolutely dumpstered BFX? Surely they'd be like, well, these
I
guys
would
have
have thought, no,
something.
and that's why I would have thought so. But then some of the mistakes which Gen G were making, I just can't imagine them making if they were locked in fully. And then I think once they lose the first game, I wonder that's when the international jitters start to come in. I'd imagine after the first, especially after game 2 as well. Maybe one game, think, oh, okay, we make one mistake. But some of the mistakes they were making, like allowing G2 to get like wards down on both sides of the rift uncontested for early jungle clear, like losing out on jungle vision contest, trying to cheat wards instead of doing it the proper way. I'm like, I just can't imagine they would do that. But of course they did. But they fell apart on the basics, the basics they were getting wrong.
I can go get a perfect timestamp that illustrates this exact point, by the way. Wait 1 second. If you've given me a little bit of time, not to like
sure.
put up on stream, but just a reference point that everyone can go to, and you guys can go to it, and you can
well, I mean,
see...
I just did a VOD review of this as well. And there were probably like 4 or 5 times where Gen G had no right contesting in a certain area of the map or made an egregious error. And game 1 had a bunch of them, but honestly, game 2 and 3 definitely had those moments too. And yeah, I would imagine that finals they would have come in with, because my worry is that they were prepping for BLG the whole event and then they didn't even face them. That's my worry. My worry is that they were prepping for them the entire event. But then again, Canyon said, I want to face G2. I think they're a creative team. They asked for that matchup and they clearly weren't ready for it. I mean, regardless, it's not an excuse. G2 massively outplayed them, but Gen G, I mean, I just don't know how else to think about it, because there were so many basics that they got wrong, which I just never seen them do ever really like that.
Right, I've got the perfect game to illustrate this point. All G2 fans, I'm coming in to help you. Go to game 1 of the not the lower bracket, the first BO3 that they play, right? Game 1 of BLG
in
versus
LEC in lower bracket in the groups, the best of 5.
Yeah, the qualifying best of 5 of BLG G2, the first one, not the finals, the first one, right? Go to game 1 and go to 21-40, like 21-30, 21-40, and watch G2's setup of the dragon. They fail to clear 1, 2, 3, 4 wards, allow a bin TP flank, and play the worst fucking fight you have ever seen in your entire life. Try and find me a G2 dragon setup that is that bad in all of LEC. That is literally just G2 having a brain fart live on stage. That's them just panicking, things going really, really wrong. You know what I mean? That's them not playing to their standard level, them playing down, right? And then them being massively punished for it. Do you get what I mean? As in, like, bro, like, the wards are all on their side. They have... This is how it's crazy. They have 3 pinks, 2 sweepers, and 2 wards still on Labrov on the Drake setup. And they place none of them.
Yeah.
Pure brain fart. So it doesn't just apply to the great Korean teams and the great Chinese teams. It can happen to everyone because performing at tier 1 consistent League of Legends all the time and having everything really crisp and really polished is really fucking hard. It's why the Gen G teams do defy belief, because from game to game to game to game to game, they're so robotic in terms of how disciplined they are.
So with that in mind, because I completely agree, Gen G, this is why I was so surprised, because I didn't expect it to happen at this event. At Worlds, yeah, pressure kind of like, it kind of loosens some of the nuts and bolts which keep that tight ship together. Do we actually think that Gen G will ever get it together as this group of players now? Or is the mental block just too solid? Because it happened at, like, the least high pressure international tournament of the year. I just don't know if they're going to get it done internationally anymore. I just don't know. I don't think they'll... If this is happening now...
Watch, this will be the world. They don't want anything else. They lose LCK,
But
they lose MSI, but they'll win Worlds. Like,
that would be just the way that logic works.
Yeah, exactly. But, yeah, there is... I think, put it this way. It's so hard to say, because it is... Again, very generalization. It's how you like perform on the day. You if you're Gen G, you just have to hope that like you don't have these like bad, like brain dead performances that like plague them. And it is like 1, 2, 3 series in like a year, and you basically just try and hope that like this is the moment, and you like move on from here towards like MSI. The only other like blessing I can like see in this is that there's a lot to learn if you didn't prep. And you have been punished for this, you'll never make that mistake again. Because the ridicule of, like, this happening to you hopefully stings so much that you never do it again.
By the way, did you guys see that side-by-side? You know, people always do the upset, like, tick list thing of, like, the year is whatever. Blah, blah. Did you see the one they did of Caps and Chovy? Like, it's actually kind of funny. Like, obviously, LCK titles are more respected than LEC titles, right? But Caps' actual, like, trophy haul... If you were to make a false equivocation between those two, it's actually just better than Jovi's. It was just like number of Worlds finals, 2-1 Caps. Number of MSI finals appearances or whatever is like 2-2 or something. It's like number of domestic trophies, like 13-11 or something like. It's actually kind of funny. Like obviously, no one really makes the comparison.
You're using finals there. Chovy's won 2 MSIs.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No. As I said, it obviously like it's nonsense. And if you actually like boil it down, obviously Chovy's CV is way more impressive. But I'd never actually thought of it in like terms of a pure numbers thing. It is kind of funny because like the argument that's always used in Chovy's favor, and I guess this is my main point, is like, well, if he keeps on playing, his domestic dominance in easily the most difficult league is just going to be so extraordinary. Like, what does that count for? Why doesn't that count as much? Whatever. And it's like, you actually do just simply have to win, like, internationally quite a lot, really, to be, like, remotely in contention, I think, for any kind of GOAT talk. Like, realistically, you just do at this point. And I guess they're just using the Caps thing to illustrate. It's like, this guy's even more ludicrously dominant than Chovy domestically, and actually his international level is pretty similar. So, like, how can anyone compare, like, Chovy to Faker or anyone else? Well, again, I'm not saying it's, like, a good argument, but actually, when you see that side by side, you're like, part of your brain is like, maybe this guy is closer to Caps than he is to Faker. Like, that is the first thing you think before you flush the thought down the drain. But yeah.
I would flush that thought, like, I don't know where that, like, thought, like, comes from, because that just basically, like, looks at results, because here's the problem.
Of course.
Caps spent probably basically, like, 1 and a bit years as, like, a top 5 player in the world, whereas Chovy has now spent 4 years as either the best or the second best player in the world, undisputedly. The only other player to have done that is Faker, who done it in a less contentious era, a much less competitive era, and so like the only person you can start comparing Chovy's individual achievements to is Faker. Now, that does not, once you compare to someone, that does not make you on the same levels as them.
Deft. Death's
Nah.
up there.
Yeah, but the problem with Deft
I think
is
Death's
Deft
nowhere
is-
near, personally, but
Yeah, problem with Deft is Deft's periods of dominance all come from like older eras as well. Like Deft's like the best player in the world in like early 2015, okay? And even then it can be debated, right? Chovy's the best player in 2024 spring. It ain't debatable. If you choose another player, it's almost like patrician. Like you're just fucking picking someone for the sake of picking someone. It was so clearly fucking Chovy. It's unbelievable.
I mean,
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
that's
actually,
the thing with both. Like with Deft, there's always a bunch of other AD carries that are at least semi close to him, even like when he's at his best. Like the thing is, when Faker was at his absolute relative best, he had an astronomical Grand Canyon lead on everyone, and Chovy had a similar for certain parts had a Grand Canyon lead on people as well.
We should actually do like a thing, not maybe like I thought. I think people would be really surprised about like the not longevity, how generous they are with Faker's career. And I'm someone who thinks Faker's the best, where they'll go like, oh, Faker was the best player in the world in 2013, okay? And they'll just say that line, right? They'll just say, oh, he's the best player in the world in 2013. It's like, right, he did lose to Daddy in LCK. Like Daddy does actually just kill him. Like Daddy does in spring. He does just lose to Daddy. Like that is a thing that you can go watch the VODs. Like he does just lose to Daddy. And then he's the then best player in summer, and then he's the best player in winter. But there is like a whole series of him losing. Like it does happen. You can watch it.
I mean, whatever he loses, great.
No, but he loses like 1-on-1. That's what
Yeah,
I'm saying.
sure.
Like, yeah, exactly. So it's like, but people just go, oh, he's the best player in the world for all of 2013. It's like, well, there was a whole split I played. They wasn't the best player.
Sure, and
yeah, exactly.
Chovy just lost to Caps, so see him, I guess. Anyway,
okay. We've got the most petulant Faker fan here. Okay, that by the way, you see that point you just made.
Mhm.
That's the point. Chovy isn't the best player in the world right now. Yeah, because he just lost.
Not right now.
No.
Not right now.
Right. So there you go. Yeah, that data point is sound.
No, but he is the best player of the world.
Chovy? No, he's not right now.
No, not right
after
now.
this
He's not. No.
I
Not
disagree.
this
I disagree. I don't think. Like, I know the old adage of like you're only as good as your last performance. I think that no. I think that's right. Okay, for example, imagine right, and this would only really work with one player. But let's imagine he plays LCK, a normal LCK split, like they did in winter or whatever, and he plays the final, and he's by far the best player. Like all season, all split long, he's by far the best player. Then he loses. Like gets outplayed by Bulldog in the final, let's just say for the sake of argument, right? And they lose that series. No one would be like, well, Chovy is now not the best player in the world. It would only work if like BDD met him in the final and bodied him. Then you'd be like, well, BDD was like semi in the conversation anyway, so then him bodying him 1v1 in a 5-game series puts him over the top. But it doesn't work if Caps beats Chovy in a series. That doesn't mean that Chovy's not the best player in the world. Like to me, that makes no sense.
That's not what I said. It's Chovy's own individual performance, and like it depends on how much of a period you want to stick on it.
Okay, so who's the best player in the world right now then?
Bin.
Probably Ben. I think it's Ben.
Actually,
it's Ben.
okay, yeah. Actually, yeah. No, that's
Right,
fair.
like,
That is
what-
fair.
like,
Yeah.
what-
I think
fair,
no.
yeah.
In fact, I actually don't think it's close. Bin is fucking incredible.
Yeah, that's fair.
Like I
That's fair.
don't know what we're like talking. Like that's what I'm saying. That's
Okay, maybe
the
it's
point
maybe
I'm
it's
trying-
close if you. It depends on what like window of time you choose. But
Exactly,
it's quite
but
clearly it's Bin is best.
But this is what I'm saying. This is what like, and again, when I was unpacking there, this is what we do with Faker. If you make the window of time big enough, then you do have to agree because 2013 includes Worlds, Winter, Summer, right? But if you actually take each individual inference of like period of time, not like week to week, but like
No, but I mean, there has to
tournament.
be a proper candidate as well. It can't just be because someone didn't play well, they lose the title. It's like someone has to take it as well. Like I don't think.
Faker had literally not won anything. Like he, like there
Yeah,
were
sure,
people-
but he
like,
was-
Yeah,
but-
it was the first tournament he ever played.
Yeah, sure. But I mean, but
Yeah.
but Faker over basically from day one that Faker was playing the game from a level perspective, he was like the best player in the game, like on a professional level. Basically, from day one, he was actually just the best, immediately the best player. Like that is also something.
You can make a strong argument for him being like best player in the world. Besides, like there were like some patches of 2014 where I think that Dade, Dandy, and Mata like all overtook him in terms of game understanding. But like he was consistently top player in the world for the first, like up until like 2018.
But no, I'm just saying, it's like that's why you have to be like and thinking of careful because at the end of this year, Rich, what we might end up doing is saying, okay, Chovy was the best player in the world this year, yeah. But we might end up saying that. But that is not the same as saying it for 2014 because this year would be way different contextually in terms of like Chovy never had an individual performance in 2014 that was as bad as this.
Sure. No, I
This
mean,
was way
sure.
worse.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
just don't think. As I said, to me, it's like the only point I was making is like if you're the best player in the world for an entire split, basically, and then you go to a tournament and you underperform and go
Yes.
out, it doesn't mean you're not the best player. But in this case, it does because Bin is playing as Bin is playing. But I'm just saying, by default, it doesn't mean you lose the crown. It's like someone has to grab the crown and chuck it on their head.
Well, we'll talk about that. It's fine.
Anyway, that's going to be it for this week, guys. I thought about, doing a little sort of obituary on Lion, but I actually just can't really be bothered. They're just such a nothing story, really, isn't it? I mean, basically, they perform pretty much part of for the course. I think it's fair to say. So I just have nothing really to discuss there. So yeah,
Going 5 games versus Loud, perhaps an underperformance,
well,
I would say.
sure, but they got a game versus JDG, so there you go, wonderful. Anyway, yeah, thanks for coming, North America. Thank you guys for watching, and we'll see you next time.